Hello, my dear companions. I hope you have started your day very well and continue to have a great day. Based on discussions with the friends present in the class, it has been decided that we will hold a few sessions to talk about narcissism and ways to treat it. Since this is the first session, we will focus on the concept of narcissism, the characteristics of narcissistic individuals, and why we need to confront them. To understand the concept of narcissism, we first need to know what it is not. Some people mistakenly interpret the traits of narcissistic individuals as positive qualities. However, narcissism is considered a moral vice. I'll give two examples here, one is confidence, and the other is idealism. Many people mistakenly interpret a narcissistic person as someone who has high self-confidence. Or when they want to define a narcissistic individual, they say this person is an idealist. But there are fundamental differences between narcissistic individuals and those who possess these two traits. The most significant difference between a narcissistic person and someone with high self-confidence is that when a narcissistic individual encounters people who are socially or financially superior to them, they lose their composure and behave submissively in front of them. They exhibit exaggerated humility, making their surroundings acutely aware of this sudden change in their behavior. A person who was just a moment ago very narcissistic suddenly bows deeply before someone else. They lose their composure in such a way that everyone notices the change in their behavior style. That on the other hand, a person with high self-confidence does not lose their composure when they are around someone who ranks higher socially, academically, financially, or in terms of family background, factors that are considered advantages in society. The confident individual maintains their self-esteem and does not lose their composure in front of these people. The reason is clear. Previously, when we discussed the topic of self-confidence, we said that self-confidence simply means, I am capable, I am valuable, and I deserve respect regardless of my social standing, race, gender, skin color, nationality, religion, or other social factors. Therefore, someone with high self-confidence values their existence greatly. If someone stands next to them who has a higher social status, this person does not lose their composure because they see themselves as valuable. However, narcissists create a false identity for themselves. When they encounter individuals whom they feel are significantly superior to them, creating a meaningful disparity in their minds, they lose their composure. In other situations, if someone is slightly superior to them but the difference in status is not substantial, narcissists resort to dirty tactics such as backstabbing, lying, or mocking in an attempt to bring down that person whom they perceive as slightly superior. But when there is a significant difference between them and the individuals I mentioned earlier, they display strange forms of submission. Thus, there is a difference between narcissism and self-confidence. There is also a difference between narcissism and idealism. An idealistic person is someone who has high standards in everything and strives to present their best self in every area. They are not satisfied with mediocrity or even average performance. They want to excel in every field they enter. This is what makes someone an idealist, which is very positive and contributes to personal growth. However, one must be careful not to compromise their self-confidence while being idealistic, because it's natural for a person to have certain limitations and not be able to excel in all areas simultaneously. By understanding human limitations, idealism can lead to significant personal development. However, a narcissistic individual sets this very high standard that they have created in their mind only for others, not for themselves. For example, a narcissistic person may not be a skilled cook, even though they don't perceive themselves that way, but they expect others to adhere to numerous details when they cook. Or a narcissist may not maintain cleanliness in their own home. They do not create a level of order and tidiness in their own space, yet when they enter someone else's home, they speak about this issue in a way that conveys to the other person that they don't know how to be a good housekeeper. If a narcissistic individual is a man, when we talk about business with him, he may not necessarily be very successful in his own business. He is not at the top level in his field. However, when he talks to others, for instance, about his children and those around him, he expects them to present their best selves in that field and to excel in their own businesses. This is where the difference lies between a narcissistic person and an idealistic person. An idealistic person sets high standards for themselves, while a narcissistic person sets high standards for those around them. Of course, there may be similarities between narcissism, which is a moral vice, and certain traits considered moral virtues, but there are subtle points that distinguish them. Now we have discussed two topics, idealism and self-confidence. There are certainly other discussions as well. If there is an opportunity in the future, we will talk about them. But it is very important because later, when we discuss how to confront these issues and say that one of the actions is not to feed this narcissism, it is crucial for us to recognize that narcissism is different from self-confidence. We should never refer to a narcissistic person in a group as someone who has high self-confidence because we are actually feeding their narcissism. Similarly, we shouldn't say someone is very idealistic because we are feeding their narcissism. To ensure this feeding does not occur and that this narcissism diminishes day by day until it disappears, it is necessary to understand what narcissism is not and not to interpret this flaw in others as perfection. That if we want to examine the issue of narcissism, we need to see where it comes from. Narcissism is one of those traits that is genetically passed down to future generations. Honestly, if we look at the matter, we Iranians are narcissistic beings. Due to our historical background and the time when we held half of the earth under our empire, and because of the beautiful race we belong to and the intelligence we possess, along with all the good traits that have been recorded about us in history, though many of them may not be true, as it is often said that history is written by victorious kings. Our victorious kings have left behind such a favorable history because every time we think back to the past, we feel a sense of pride and honor. In many areas, we were superior to the people of our time. The gene of narcissism has existed within us and has been passed down from generation to generation, even now. If you look at it respectfully towards all dear Iranians from the western strip of Iran, this gene of narcissism is evident in them. If you look up northwestern Iran, you will see Turks, then Kurds, then Laz, and then Arabs, I mean the Arabs of Khuzestan. All these groups exhibit the gene of narcissism. When you encounter people from that region, you can perceive this narcissism. Now, I initially mentioned that we Iranians have a gene of narcissism. Why have I limited it to Western Iran? The reason is that in our eastern country, in Khorasan, we have a mystical tradition known as Khorasani mysticism, which is derived from Buddhism. Buddhists are very grounded and humble people. There is a specific humility within them. If you observe the people of Tibet or India, you will notice their level of humility and modesty. They even have an oath in their religion, which is Buddhism. One of its clauses states that they swear not to harm any living creature, meaning they are not allowed to kill even an ant. When they walk through their cities, they show respect to all animals. They also respect the four-legged animals present in their cities. This is different from their cow worshipping or calf worshipping practices. Even Indians who are not cow worshippers show respect to cows on the streets. They show respect to animals on the streets. This humility that exists in Buddhism has entered the mysticism of the East and has covered a good geographical radius of Iran, and in that area, the genetic trait of narcissism has faded. We can't say it has completely disappeared, but it has certainly diminished in that region. However, because the Abbasid caliphs ruled over Iran from the west, many good events and valuable knowledge from the east could not be transferred to the west. This historical background exists within us, indicating that genetically, the gene of narcissism we had in the western part of our country remains intact. In any case, we genetically possess this narcissism, and we should try to accept it. Now, given all these points, let's discuss why we should treat this narcissism. If we see this narcissism somewhere, why should we treat it? We look at this issue from two perspectives. One is the narcissism we see in those around us, and the second is the narcissism we observe within ourselves. We need to address the narcissism we see in our surroundings for several reasons. First, the universe does not favor complacency. That is, spending 30 or 40 years tolerating a narcissistic person without trying to change them is a mistake, and the universe does not appreciate this tolerance. Many women, when talking about their narcissistic husbands, say that at the beginning of their lives together, he wasn't so bad, but now he has become much worse. They say, I don't do anything about it. I don't say anything to him. I don't confront him. Well, all this tolerance has led to the situation worsening day by day. When we discussed this in class, one of my friends made a very nice point. Isn't there a poem that says, "The comfort of two worlds is the interpretation of these two words, be kind to friends and tolerate enemies"? So why do you say that the universe does not favor tolerance? I explained to my dear friend that when we talk about tolerating enemies, we are discussing individuals who are in our close circle of relationships, such as spouses, children, fathers, brothers, mothers, and sisters, these are not considered our enemies. They are our friends, and the reason we say we should not tolerate them is that they have come into our lives to bring us joy. If a trait like narcissism exists within any of them and causes us distress, it prevents us from enjoying our lives. If I tolerate it, it means that the negative trait in that person continues to exist and cannot bring the joy they should have contributed to my life, causing me to lose out on my life experiences. Many of us are affected by the behaviors of those around us, and if there is a difficult person nearby, we cannot enjoy our lives because their bad behavior impacts us. Therefore, it is very important not to tolerate and to try to change whatever is causing us distress because it is harming us. The second reason why narcissism should be treated is that I mentioned earlier that narcissism can be genetically transmitted. If I do not treat my own narcissism, I will pass it on to future generations. This is a disease. Just as we do not want a weak or defective gene to be passed down to our descendants, narcissism is also a defective gene and a disease that should not be allowed to transfer to future generations. Narcissists limit their surroundings. We will discuss their characteristics later so you can understand what traits they possess. For now, just know that narcissists restrict those around them. They cannot connect with others and force their close ones to limit their interactions with others as well. Human beings learn and grow through social interactions. A person who confines themselves to a very small environment and limits their human relationships does not learn anything, does not grow, does not progress, and their inner qualities as a human do not develop. Therefore, this trait of a narcissist that limits those around them hinders the progress and growth of individuals. If we want to grow, we need to treat the narcissistic person who has impacted our lives. The next point is that narcissists take away the self-confidence of those around them, and self-confidence is one of the key components of growth and advancement. Well, when I lack self-confidence, many potential abilities and talents remain unexpressed, and a part of the world's work is left unfinished because each of us is a unique being who has come to do something special. The reason some people come into this life and die without accomplishing anything significant may be that they have lived in the shadow of a narcissistic person, which has prevented them from recognizing their own talents and bringing them from potential to actualization. Therefore, if we want our talents to flourish, we need a concept called self-confidence, which is a positive moral trait. As long as we are in the presence of a narcissistic person, we cannot cultivate this self-confidence within ourselves to reach the flourishing of our talents. Narcissism has certain signs that we need to address. Let's define a symbol for ourselves at the very beginning so that whenever we want to think about narcissism, we can bring this symbol to mind along with the definitions associated with it. The best example of a narcissist throughout human history, in my opinion, is Pharaoh. Pharaoh and Pharaonism in psychology are equivalent to the term narcissism. As you know, Pharaoh claimed divinity on earth. Narcissists also have a sort of divine claim. They believe they are the center of the universe, and all other people revolve around them, growing, living, and benefiting because of their existence. Narcissists set their own standards for life. For example, a narcissist will introduce their own sleep and wake times as the standard for everyone else in the universe. If they are an early riser, they will say that a proper person wakes up at 5 a.m. If they are someone whose performance improves at night due to their circumstances, they might say that a healthy person stays up late and sleeps during the day, asserting that a proper person works until 4 or 5 a.m. when it's dark and quiet enough to concentrate. They may argue that it's impossible to focus during the morning rush hour. This is just one example. In all areas, narcissists define their standards based on their preferences. For instance, regarding food, their standard is based on the flavors they enjoy, even though we know there is no universal standard for taste on Earth. You might see one culture consuming extremely spicy foods while another completely avoids any spice. You cannot tell either group that they are right or wrong. However, narcissists consider themselves as the benchmark. They define food according to what they like. If someone who prefers sour flavors finds a dish lacking in sourness, they will claim it is tasteless. Conversely, if someone cannot tolerate sourness and you add just a little sour seasoning, even if everyone else at the table agrees that the dish is delicious, that person will insist that it is too sour and that the cook does not know what they are doing. One characteristic of narcissists is that they view themselves as the standard and measuring stick for their surroundings and the universe. It is great to define high standards. It helps us grow and progress. However, declaring that only their standard is valid leads to ignoring other situations that exist in life. Someone who only tries one flavor of food and always enjoys that same taste will never become familiar with different flavors. You can apply this idea to all forms of entertainment and activities in life. Narcissists have a very idealized and dreamlike image of themselves, which is far removed from reality because a person who sees themselves as superior to others does not strive to learn anything. Many positive traits they had at the beginning of their lives gradually diminish because they make no effort to improve. Narcissists always feel entitled compared to others and convey to others the feeling that you owe them something. Another sign of a narcissist is that they take away other people's self-confidence. When you constantly blame someone for something you expected them to do, that task may not even be right, and that person may have chosen not to do it based on their own judgment. When you keep criticizing and blaming them, you are essentially taking away their self-confidence, and this is what narcissists do. Narcissists constantly engage in emotional blackmail with others. You see, we said that they see themselves as the center of their own universe and want everyone in the world to be connected to them. No relationship between two people outside of them should form. To prevent these connections from happening, they resort to emotional blackmail. For example, a narcissistic mother or father, when they see that two of their children are connecting with each other and that they don't play a significant role in that relationship, start to engage in emotional blackmail. They may feign illness. Even if they are genuinely sick, they exaggerate their symptoms. They constantly remind the children of the days when they might no longer be around. They share a mix of real memories and sometimes fabricated stories from their past, so the children understand how much effort these parents put into raising them, how much sacrifice they made, and how much they gave up of their own pleasures and joys to raise these kids. They forget that this is the duty of every parent, and many parents around the world do this. However, because they want to engage in emotional blackmail with their children, they repeatedly use phrases like, "I will die," and "You will never see me again," or "You will regret the day you come and kiss my hand." They remind the children that one day they will open the door to find that my voice no longer echoes in this house, constantly reminding them that my presence in this world is not permanent. They keep telling them, "I suffered hunger to raise you. I sacrificed my heart for you. I gave up my youth. I sacrificed my family." When you look at this person's life story, you see that they never had such opportunities in their life. They claim to have given up a job for their children, but they never actually had a specific job to give up. They might say they gave up their education for you, but this person might not have had the opportunity to continue their studies at all. They didn't get accepted into a field where they could have withdrawn from their studies. Or perhaps during high school, they weren't a bright student who could have been imagined on a successful educational path. Nonetheless, these individuals engage in emotional blackmail with their children and those around them. If they have older siblings with a significant age difference from their younger siblings, narcissists will also do this with their younger siblings. Thus, narcissists engage in emotional blackmail with people. They instill feelings of guilt in others. As we mentioned, they take away people's self-confidence, blackmail them emotionally, and make them feel guilty. They constantly exaggerate the things they have done while downplaying what others have done for them. This leads them to feel entitled to everything and believe that the entire world owes them something, making others always feel indebted to them and carrying a sense of guilt towards these individuals. Narcissists have limited social circles. They either don't have friends, or if they do form friendships, those connections are short-lived because you can't just discard your family, you have to tolerate your parents and siblings. However, if you see a friend bothering you, you can cut ties with them. Narcissists often scatter many of their friends away from them. We will eventually discuss under what conditions a lasting friendship might exist, but generally speaking, in equal circumstances, where you can't give any advantages to the other person or receive any from them, their friendships tend to be short-lived because they want to be the center of attention. Due to all the guilt they impose and their sense of entitlement, they don't maintain friendships for themselves. Alongside not maintaining friendships for themselves, narcissists also disrupt the friendships of others because they want to be the center of attention for everyone. They don't want any pair of people to form a connection without them being the third person in it. For this reason, because they themselves cannot communicate with others, they disrupt the friendly relationships between people. One of the reasons we said we need to be able to treat narcissists is so that we can maintain our friendly connections with other individuals. The term friendly that I use does not solely refer to familial relationships. We may even establish a friendly relationship with a blood relative with whom we have a distant connection. By friendly relationship, I mean an effective relationship, a relationship in which a person can grow, feel good while in that relationship, and derive many insights and benefits from it. Narcissists usually do not show kindness to others. Even if they do show kindness, it is not out of genuine compassion, rather, it is because they want to provide certain services to people and extort something in return. For example, they might give you a gift and expect you to praise them in front of a larger group or thank them publicly for the gift or service they provided, thereby elevating their status among others. One of the ways we say not to feed narcissists is that if they offer you services, you should only thank them in private when it's just the two of you, and not give them any fuel for their narcissism. It's true that a person should be grateful, but what difference does it make whether you thank someone in a two-person setting or in front of 100 people? It doesn't matter if you express gratitude. What matters regarding narcissists is that gratitude should be expressed discreetly and only in their presence. Many narcissists provide services to others. They might even go above and beyond in their service. They may neglect their own families to serve friends or distant acquaintances, offering resources that should be reserved for their immediate family just so others will praise them. They have a saying, "So-and-so is our disciple," or "So-and-so is our servant." This reflects a kind of Pharaoh-like attitude where they provide these services and are willing to offer resources related to their immediate family just so that those around them become their followers. This is one of the characteristics of narcissistic individuals. Narcissists have various traits. If we were to examine all of them, this discussion would be much longer than what has been covered so far. Perhaps we will address more points as the discussion continues. However, an extremely important point that I urge all friends to keep in mind from this point forward is that more than wanting to treat narcissists, we want to look within ourselves. If we find these traits within ourselves, we should eliminate them and prevent the gene of narcissism from being passed on to future generations. So please, as you listen to this discussion, do not picture various friends, acquaintances, and relatives in your mind. A useful way to engage in self-discovery and understand how psychology can help us is not by searching for flaws in those around us. There is a well-known proverb that says anyone who reads a psychology book feels that everyone in the world is mentally ill. This happens because we unconsciously seek out negative traits in others while ignoring any positive traits within ourselves. This is also one of the signs of hidden narcissism. Therefore, when studying the signs of narcissism, please focus more on finding these traits within yourself rather than looking for them in others. Reflect on how many situations in your life you exhibit one or more of these characteristics, or at least acknowledge their existence within yourself. This awareness will help me accept and treat my own narcissism more easily. Of course, we will discuss treatment together in the future. To conclude this discussion, I would like to mention that there are two types of narcissism. One category consists of narcissists who are noble and calm. They may be narcissistic but have also acquired some moral traits from their families and social upbringing, which allows them to respect others despite their narcissism. The second type is overt narcissism or unrefined narcissism. Narcissism, in its unrefined form, is when a person tries to satisfy their narcissistic desires through loud and aggressive behavior if they don't get what they want. In our upcoming sessions, we will discuss the treatment of unrefined narcissism or overt narcissism, and if we can address those, we can certainly tackle noble narcissism as well. I would also like to mention something else regarding narcissism. There are two categories of narcissism, overt and covert. I am not focusing on the distinction between noble and unrefined at this moment. That is a different classification. Overt narcissism is the type that manifests in a person's behavior, while covert narcissism exists in the individual's mind and is not visible in their actions. However, it is still present. When we want to search within ourselves for narcissism, we need to look for this covert form. For those of us who have been working on ourselves for years, accepting that we might be narcissistic can be challenging. However, here we need to seek out its hidden components. For example, if I say that a narcissist measures the universe against their own standards, when I reflect on myself and say that this does not apply to me, I might conclude that I am not a narcissistic person. But having one or two of these traits is enough to indicate narcissism. It is not necessary for all the characteristics I mentioned to be present. Furthermore, narcissism has many more diverse components than what I have outlined, and those pertain to overt narcissism. Covert narcissism exists within individuals and also needs to be addressed because all the issues we mentioned in an overt manner also occur in a hidden way, and if we have covert narcissism, we will negatively impact others. One sign of covert narcissism is when I want to talk about my humility and groundedness. I first mentioned several positive traits about myself before I start discussing my humility. For instance, I might say someone is very self-important, but despite my higher education, better family background, and more significant job position, I behave much more humbly than they do. This too is a sign of narcissism that exists within individuals in a covert way. This message has become quite long because I needed to convey various concepts regarding narcissism and its characteristics. If you want to know more about many of the points discussed, there are related audio recordings on our YouTube channel and Telegram channel that you can study. I recommend listening to this message multiple times until the next one is posted so that you can reflect on yourself. The important point is that we should study ourselves to see which of these traits apply to us. With the approach that narcissism is a treatable condition, we will continue our discussions in future sessions. I hope for the day when one of humanity's greatest afflictions, narcissism, will be completely eradicated from the earth through the efforts of this group of friends and others who access these messages. On that day, wars will cease, famine and drought will end, and humanity will experience peace. Wishing for that day, stay happy. Goodbye.